Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming and an unheralded late night broadcast, a live one at that, in which we're going to do something that harkens back to the good old days of the YouTube RPG Brigade, making videos about role playing games, about gaming in general, and our new acquisitions. It has been a while since I've made a video like this. I think back to, I guess, what was it, UK Games Expo 2011? Or 2012 maybe, where I would film all the games I picked up at that convention back in my hotel room or after I'd got home or something like that, and show them off, be very excited about them. It's a fond memory. And so I decided I'd revisit it today because there's a few very exciting things that have happened. So thank you very much. Oh, and hello, Velvet Tea Cake. Good evening to you. And to the Knight as well, appropriately. And Nicholas. Well, I'm always pleased to see you there, Nicholas. So yeah, I go back to UK Games Expos of the past and when I would pick up lots of RPGs that I had never seen or played before, and the excitement I would feel about buying them, reading them, taking them to my gaming club and getting a chance to run new games. And that was partly what drove this video. Also, I happened to receive a rather big package in the mail, which you should be able to see. Vampire the Masquerade chapters. They make no surprise of what's contained within this box and the other box that comes with it. So that's rather exciting as well. Of course, the reason I've received a copy of Chapters isn't because I backed it, though I certainly would have had I been a customer. It's because I co-wrote it. I was one of the writers on Chapters. I contributed to several of the scenarios. Honestly, at this point, I couldn't tell you which. Not because I've completely forgotten, but because I tend to jump around on a lot of games and a lot of writing these days. So my intention is to show you what is in Chapters. My intention is to show you what I picked up from the UK Games Expo. But I also want to just take a very quick opportunity to mention that, and apologies for the shilling. I do apologize. But we are entering our last day on the Kickstarter for They Came From the RPG Anthology. This is the They Came From game. You know that I developed the They Came From games. The RPG Anthology is a big one for me because it's a book that introduces our quick play rule set, introduces Story Path Ultra, which is another rule set, an optional one for this game. And we also incorporate genres of noir, westerns, costume dramas, space opera, Shakespeare, and now, due to backer voting, we also have heist movies. We have capes and cowls, sort of 1960s comic book superheroes. We have murder mysteries, and very soon we'll know the end result of our fourth poll for our ninth genre chapter. This has been a big project to develop. And I wanted to mention it, especially now that we're entering our last 24 hours, because I thought, well, I need to let you folks know that the campaign is ending. And if you have anything to give toward it, please do so. We hit funding, so that's fantastic. Anything else that we can hit is, of course, gravy. We are going towards stretch goals. We just hit our last one, and I have no doubt we will add more if people continue to back. Right now, we're aiming to get another 30 plus backers, ideally, because that will knock us onto, ideally, the next stretch goal. So yeah, if you haven't picked up this game already, if you love movies, if you love media genres, if you are the kind of person I am, who is a film fanatic, who loves premium TV and things like that, but also loves the parodies, the Naked Guns, the Police Squads, the Garth Marenghi's Dark Places, They Came From is a game you will probably enjoy if you've never considered it before. And one last thing, I do consider They Came from Dracula's Tomb, which is a source book I wrote for They Came from Beyond the Grave, the best Vampire the Masquerade, or not the best Vampire the Masquerade work, the best vampire work I've ever written. And I say that about to unbox Vampire the Masquerade chapters. So that is obviously a very close second, but I am very, very fond of what's in Dracula's Tomb as well. So the link for that Kickstarter is below. Please click on it. Please consider backing for the PDF or print copy, whatever you can afford. And remember, even if all you can do is back for $5, that will still get you full access to the manuscript and the ability to vote on that last chapter that's going to be added to the game. So, all that said, let's get on with some of these reveals, shall we? So the first thing I picked up at UK Games Expo 2023 was this rather oblique looking cover. The title is a little more clear: Best Left Buried, Deeper. And Best Left Buried is a game of tomb robbing and adventuring against undead. It's a rules light fantasy game that I was reading about at the stall where it was being sold. And this particular copy, Deeper, contains 3 books for the line. So it gives me basically everything I need to play. And it has a really simplistic, elegant art style to it, you know, thick black blocks, nice black and white art. And I do have a fondness for black and white art. You know, it's crisp, it's clear. It means the pages aren't too cluttered or anything like that. As you may be aware, with the World Below coming out. Oh, there we go. A Druid of the Deep. I like him. With the World Below coming out, I'm of course quite into my subterranean fantasy right now. So Best Left Buried very much appealed to me. Clearly, I don't intend to steal any ideas from it, but it's nice to know what games like the World Below or that might explore similar territories are doing. Thankfully, with it as well, I got an adventure that came with it. So, A Garden Most Foul. Nice title. It's a nice slimline adventure. Came for free with the rulebook, and I do look forward to running that for my regular gaming group. I also picked up, and this was based on, I was on a horror panel at the UK Games Expo where myself, Kat Evans, do excuse me, and a creator by the name of Stephanie Williamson were talking about horror and role-playing games. And Stephanie Williamson was speaking about her game Locus. And Locus, which I picked up the player guide and the director's guide. I appreciate any game that refers to the GM as a director, is a Silent Hill-esque horror role-playing game. Very much about personal traumas, personal backstories, personal sins that get revisited down the road in a horror setting. Once again, this is another role-playing game, the art for which I was particularly taken by. I mean, Stephanie sold it to me as a co-panelist based on descriptions alone. But this is, again, a nice book. Look at this. It's just a lovely, clean, interesting layout, beautiful art, crisp layout. I see the author here, layout artist, I think, is down as Jack Milton. But the company is Cobblepath Games. And the 2 books together make for the complete experience, I'm given to understand. I picked up a bunch of props to go with this as well. Nice reds, blacks, whites. I know that all sounds very obvious, but when you're, I guess, looking at RPGs from a design perspective and accessibility perspective, sometimes simpler is better. Too much clutter on a page can make the reader lose interest or get distracted. And I found Locus, the idea behind it of playing these deep personal horror games, something I have been lacking for a little while, and something I was very interested in going back to. And I'm a big fan of Silent Hill, as I imagine a lot of video gamers my age are. So this was a game that very much appealed, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else Cobblepath Games put out. I see we've got lots and lots of comments already in the chat, so thank you very much for people tuning in live. I believe all of these books are available in PDF, Nicholas Milioni, so please do look them up as I talk about them or afterwards. So what else do we have here? Well, I'm building up. We have the quick start for Corporation 2nd edition. So if you're after capitalistic horror and dystopia, I mean, if we don't already live in one, this is probably a game you're going to want to look into. Now, this was a book. This was one I very much picked up on the sperm of the moment, as they say. Because I don't know much about Corporation, don't know much about its first edition, but I picked it up because I was swinged by Nightfall Games. Nightfall Games you may be familiar with because of their work on things like the Terminator RPG, but more importantly, or more appealingly to me, they were working on, and this is the book I was really looking for, the Stoke of Earth role-playing game. You see, I must be attracted to horror and horror fantasy again all of a sudden. And what amazing art in Stoke of Earth. There's obviously a lot of Clint Langley in this, and you will know Clint Langley if you are fans of Slay Industries, which we'll get onto soon. Again, I've clearly got a thing for blacks, whites, and reds. I was always a fan of Vampire the Requiem, so maybe that's part of it. But Stoke of Earth is a brilliant looking game. I've heard so much about this game, and I have been waiting to pick it up. Where you are, of course, playing games set in the world of Dracula with vampire courts, werewolf clans, shadows, rippers, and so on. It's quintessential Victorian Gothic, and it really appealed to me, not just from an aesthetic perspective, but the content as well. It's a very interesting looking game. Now, I can't... it uses Nightfall Games S5S rules system, to those of you asking, which I believe is probably the one that's being used in Slay Industries 2nd edition. I don't know the name of that, but I will be able to find that out, I'm sure, because one of the other things I picked up, in fact, several of the things I picked up from UK Games Expo were Slay Industries related. If you've been following my... channel for a long time, you may know that I think the first game I ever reviewed on this channel, I mean, that video will be long gone now. The first game I ever reviewed on this channel, I think, was Slay Industries. Slay Industries is a sort of futuristic, dystopian Glasgow world where the rain never stops, where the populace are sort of cowed into constantly watching TV, where characters play Running Man style operatives with sort of NASCAR style sponsorships all over their power armor. And much of the game is spent fighting and cannibals and carrion and carnivorous pigs, while also increasing your reputation and earning more media points, while also climbing up the slippery ladder of Slay Industries, the name of the game. I was drawn to Slay Industries the first time I played it, probably back in 2003, maybe. And ever since then, I have loved the setting. So when the 2nd edition came out, I picked it up, and I still love it. And of course, swinging by Nightfall Games as I did, I picked up a bunch of Slay Industries content. So I've got lots of nice bestiary content, some more GM content, a nice little slasher comic book, some blueprint news files, because you use these to issue commands to your Slay operatives. They go to basically the job office and they get one of these BPN files that will have the details of their job on. It's just a lovely little feature I enjoy with Slay Industries. It's, again, having fun in that sort of capitalistic hell idea that has always appealed to me as a gamer. If you're a fan of 2000 AD's Judge Dredd and that sort of take, Slay Industries is very much within that mold. So I do recommend it. SLA Industries. Now, what else do we have here? We also have a thoroughly indie game called Hieronymus, where you actually work through the paintings of Hieronymus Bosch as part of a role-playing game. I have yet to read this one. I will be quite honest. This has been at the bottom of my pile, not because of any perceived lack of interest, just because I've had so much to read through and so much work to do. But yeah, it basically takes you through how to turn Bosch, the Garden of Earthly Delights, into a role-playing game. Even split up into a grid with different story hooks for each part of the grid. It's fantastic, a fantastic idea. Doing this with such an interesting, such a vivid painting. I mean, I have seen some of the Bosch works in person, and they really are striking. Smaller than you'd think, but incredibly striking. Also, big fan of Bosch on Amazon Prime and the novels by Michael Connolly. But that's a different Hieronymus Bosch. Anyway, I think that's it in terms of my picks from the UK Games Expo. I was, of course, incredibly happy to see at UK Games Expo not only copies of games I'd worked on for Chronicles of Darkness, Trinity Continuum, Scion, but also copies of They Came From Beneath the Sea and Beyond the Grave floating around. We had several games of They Came From and Trinity Continuum and Realms of Pugmire running as our Onyx Path team and myself, Eddie Webb, Michele Marsala, and Chris Jones were doing the good thing and running a bunch of games. And yeah, I got to run They Came From Camp Murder Lake a couple of times, which is my favorite They Came From to run at conventions. I think everyone can kind of get on board with a slasher movie. And yeah, it's always wonderful when you run They Came From and the takeaway people have of it is, I really want to play this game, or I really want to own this game or run this game, because they just have that much fun with it. I know that feels like selling it, but something I was discussing, the Onyx Path team were discussing on Monday, is They Came From is a game where every single time you run it for new players, those new players say, well, they come away laughing and they come away loving the game. It's an odd beast because it's a game that I don't think immediately sells on the face of it. It requires you to play it to see how fun it is, which is interesting and also presents something of an obstacle, because we, of course, want more people to pick up things like They Came From the RPG Anthology, currently on Kickstarter for around 24 hours remaining. Link below. But we can't also go to everyone's house and run the game for them. So we obviously need to pitch it right. We need to make people fall in love with the idea of it. And I'm certainly hopeful that RPG Anthology will find an audience. It's already hit, about 500 people, I think, on Kickstarter now. So hopefully it will hit even more as the campaign comes to its conclusion, hits back a kit, enters wider release, and so on. I mean, if you're a fan of any of the media genres in that game, you could do a lot worse than backing, because, yeah, if you like Westerns, everything is in there for you to run a Western game. If you like noir movies, everything is in there to run a noir game. But anyway, I've been through They Came From the RPG Anthology already. I think I know what most of you are here to see, and that is Vampire the Masquerade Chapters. Now, Chapters, as I have pointed out already, comes in a couple of large boxes. Now, I've already done the duty of opening up the top of the Chapters box. Didn't want to make too much noise. And as I say, I've got the full set of Chapters here, because as a contributing author to the game, it was part of my contract. I received a copy of it, so that's nice. I did put a little more money towards the campaign. I'm going to have to put it down to open this up while it was going on, because it was one of those games that got hit by things like the pandemic and that affected shipping. And I'm never against helping a company out when unforeseen circumstances such as COVID drastically increase the costs of production and shipping. But let's see what's the easiest way to get this out of the box. Oh, it's gonna take some doing. Oh, out it comes. Ooh, oof. Somehow heavier outside the box than inside. Wow. Okay. Whoops. And there we go. I've got a little wallet of cards on the front there, but this here is Chapters in its lovely cellophane seal, which for the time being I will probably leave unbroken. Chapters is a game set in Montreal, which you may be familiar with if you're a Vampire the Masquerade fan, as a Sabbat city. The Sabbat have actually fallen in Montreal as of the time of the game, and you're kind of part of the court that is left picking up the pieces of that. If you're a fan of Montreal by Night, you will be able to find a lot of connective tissue throughout the game, but also plenty of new plot as well. You don't need to be familiar with all of that stuff from 2nd edition to get Chapters at all. I know, not just myself, the other authors, we put an awful lot of effort into making a huge array of interesting scenarios. There's optional stuff as well. There's a legacy element to it where, you know, if you go one way, you basically lock yourself out of another, but that doesn't come up constantly, so you're never feeling cheated. Every clan, I think, that's available in V5 is available to play in this. Some of them come as expansion packs. I know I wrote the expansion packs for the Ministry and the Banu Hakim, I believe. And apologies if I don't know all of these things off by heart. The La Sombra, there's a La Sombra in it. I don't think there's a Zimishi in it. You know what? Hush my mouth. I don't think there's a Zimishi or a Ravnos. And the Salubri aren't a real clan anyway, so they don't count. So, yeah, you can see the kinds of content in the core game just from the back of the box there. And there we are. Now, that isn't all. I could open this up. I feel inclined to open it up in a meaningful way right now, just so you can see some of what's in this core box. We'll see what we can show off to you. Isn't that satisfying? Opening cellophane for the first time on camera. Now, I've got a second box over there. That box contains things like NPC Miniatures. It contains the Hecata expansion pack. I think there's more in there besides that as well. Chapters is by no means a light game. I think the average scenario lasts about 30 minutes to an hour, approximately. But some of them do fluctuate. The thing is, it's got a long story. It's an involved story, and there's a mystery element to it as well, which you might be able to solve. You can use your player knowledge, but you can also roll as characters, as in a normal RPG of Vampire. Do excuse me. As in a normal RPG of Vampire, you have a huge number of ways that you can actually solve the various scenarios in this game. You can overcome them. You can, of course, fail them, and you can succeed in those scenarios in lots of different ways and to different scales of success. You're not always told in advance what is the best way to complete a task, so you have absolute freedom within the confines of the game's rules to play it your way and then what's more, it doesn't hit you over the head by saying you failed to do this, because it's a story game and the story continues as you choose your destiny, as it were. Sometimes you will have multiple choice as to which scenarios to pick up. You won't necessarily know that you missed something. So in that respect, it actually rewards replayability. Plus, there are lots of encounters during the game that are basically dependent on you playing, let's say, a certain clan. You might have an encounter with a vampire and you will have two options on the card. You sort of deal with this socially, deal with it mentally, and there'll be different checks you can roll. Or if you are a Brujah, go to this page. Now, you don't necessarily have a Brujah in your coterie because you have a large array of clans available in this game. So that means the characters you choose at the beginning of the game will have a direct impact on the story that you experience with chapters. In all, I have to say, this is one of the most fun vampire projects I've ever worked on. For right now, I feel like I would be quite happy if I could continue working for Flyos on these board games for a long time. I'm currently working on, and not interested in that. I would be more than happy to carry on doing so, because I'm currently working on Retaliation for Werewolf the Apocalypse, and that's a lot of fun too. So we have here a massive stack of tiles. Each of these tiles is a different map that will appear during the course of the game. Sometimes you will reuse them and it'll basically be lit differently, or there'll be different hazardous terrain, different NPCs, things like that. Sometimes you're returning to locations, sometimes the same locations are being reused to tell a different story. As well as that, I will run out of floor space at some point, I have no doubt. You have the storybook, which is hefty. The storybook basically takes you through each scenario bit by bit, and it's currently sealed. And what's more, it will remain sealed for the purpose of this video, because I don't want to give any spoilers away to anyone who happens to play this mystery game. You have a rulebook, of course. It isn't too hefty. The rules for chapters aren't a massive bear to learn, and I know that on the Flyos website as well, there's a lot of clarifications too for anyone who might need them. I know that the Facebook group for chapters has been abuzz since the game started getting delivered. We also, this is really quite an extensive box. We also have in here a staggering array, you probably can't see these very well, of NPC tokens, antagonists. There is more than one layer here. So you're not just going to keep bumping into the same characters from scenario to scenario. Then you have your little miniatures too for your characters if you wish to paint them. I tend not to. There's a sand timer as well, because we're bastards. We basically have some decisions in the game basically set to the sand timer. If you can't come up with a decision by the time the sand timer runs out, you are obliged to take another one. Those obviously occur in stressful situations where the choice you make is, well, it will have a dire effect. And beneath all of that, so we've got tokens, we've got dice in here as well. Well, it doesn't look like I will need to buy the special V5 dice anymore. I don't think I was going to anyway. We have, oh, good lord. There are things like damage trackers. There's character sheets in here. We have... Good heavens above. I don't want to give everything away, that's the thing. There's also NPC cards. What are these? Oh, these are things like whispers, rumors, stories, sub-stories. there's a lot of those decks. They're probably the heaviest thing in here. You have effect cards that look like merits and flaws that crop up throughout the game. And you can take them temporarily for doing something. I think they tend to carry over. They tend to carry over for one scenario. If you haven't used it by the end of that second scenario, the effect card is nullified from what I remember. I did admittedly write for it quite some time ago, so apologies if I get that wrong. But yeah, Chapters, it's a beautiful game. Sticking with my red, black, and white theme of tonight, in terms of everything that we've gone through so far. And I know that not all of these things are going to fit in, because I am putting them back rather hastily so that I can create some space on my floor and I'm not trapped in creating a fire hazard. What a wonderful summary of Chapters that would be. Be careful where you unload it. You don't want it to be a fire hazard. So that is the Chapters base box, but that is not all that comes with Chapters. Yes, you do need to do some lifts, work on the upper body strength for this game. And I need to remember not to lose this booklet that was on the front of the cellophane. There we go. It was loud but necessary. And then we have the second Chapters box. So I just saw that Jack, Law by Night, said, damn, that's a lot of things. Yeah, damn, there are a lot of things here. So now we have NPC Miniatures, as if the little cardboard standees aren't enough. We have miniatures for the NPCs too. You can see some of them there on the art. We also have painted miniatures for the lazy gamer, such as myself. Maybe that should have been my name on YouTube instead of the Gentleman Gamer. It does seem like having a name like the Gentleman Gamer goes down badly these days. Typically, people who refer to themselves as gentlemen tend to be a bit strange. Usually around women, but I would like to think that I adopted that epithet, or was given that epithet, in fact, by a wonderful YouTuber by the name of Tetsubo, Tetsubo57, who is still going, still uploading one video a day every day, because I was nice about role-playing games. We have metal D10s. Again, should I start playing V5 again? We have metal boons here. We have the Hecata expansion pack. Oh, good lord. So the Hecata come with an entire plot all of their own. And a new character, same with the La Sombra here. We have, what's more, there is actually a surprising amount in this box. The Banu Hakim, which was one that I wrote. I wrote a fair amount of the core game as well, but I know for a fact that I wrote the Banu Hakim material. And again, apologies if I don't remember absolutely everything that I contributed to Chapters. It was a while ago that I did this work. I don't know, because I've not opened the individual scenarios, if authors are credited on specific scenarios. I have a feeling, just by the way I would write, I'll recognize them when I play them. And we have the Ministry, which is another one that I wrote. And there's more still. Lots of packs for cards and a dice bag by the looks of it. Good lord. Lord above. And we have even more items for the game. A booster deck of items. I'm guessing in case we lose cards, or they are bonuses I've got because I've got the full set of the game. So that is chapters. Wow. And now I have a very messy study surrounding me. I will have to report back on how I find the playing of that game, but I imagine I'm going to be slightly biased given, again, the co-writing of it. But nevertheless, I hope you enjoyed that. So I'm going to go through the questions and comments and see if there are things that I should be responding to. Before I do, and thank you so much for giving me your attention, especially for so long. I appreciate this video has gone on for 35 minutes, and I know that I'm somewhat skilled at rambling on at length without interruption or edits. The thing I really want to bring people's attention to, and this is the last time I will do it, is our RPG Anthology is coming to an end on Kickstarter in the next day or so. The link is below in the description. If you like what I do, if you like the games I create, if you like the videos I create, if you like my sense of humor, anything, if you like me, do you like me? If you want to give me your support, head on over to that Kickstarter, pledge an amount, any amount, but ideally get a book out of it. You know, you only have to back for $5 to get access to the manuscript, the full thing. With that, you will have access to play noir, space opera, westerns, costume dramas, Shakespeare, and so on. We've been through this already, but they came from the RPG Anthology. It is linked right below. If you can open up that Kickstarter right now while I'm talking, I will appreciate it. But there is something in it for you. It isn't just an RPG. Not only has it been my birthday, and I want you to back this Kickstarter as a present to me, the main thing is that as backers of this Kickstarter, you get to choose what goes into it. Now, we're at the last furlong, I suppose, so there isn't too much more content we can add, but every single week we've been doing a backer poll where you can basically nominate chapters to get added to this book. So far, we did the meticulously planned bank job, so we got a heist game in there. We did the billiard room with the candlesticks. We got murder mysteries. We had capes and cowls, so we were going to have comic book, specifically 1960s comic book superheroes. And it looks like we're coming up to either Pirates or Neo Tokyo. So that's either Pirates and Adventure movies or 1990s anime. But there are 4 other options on that poll as well. We have the Code of the Bushido, Samurai. We have Dawkins Creek, so teen soap operas. We have, and I shouldn't forget the other ones, High Octane Apocalypse, Mad Max, post-apocalyptic. And we have the Steel Dragon Fighting Tournament, which is fighting games and martial arts movies. If you back the Kickstarter, you can vote on which one is going to be added, and that poll is also lasting for 1 more day. So if you want to have your say, I strongly suggest backing before the Kickstarter ends so you can vote on it. You can find that poll linked in the updates on the Kickstarter page. And I should clarify, it's not my birthday today. It was my birthday, but still, back the Kickstarter. And if you do back the Kickstarter, you know what's really helpful? Post in the comments, I came here from Matthew's video. Not because I need the praise or the plaudits. That's not what it's for. It's just to know if these kinds of things have reach. So let's have a look now in the chat and see if anyone has posed any interesting comments or questions. So I'm going to scroll all the way up to the top. Lots of people saying it's been a long time. It has, since I've done any kind of video like this. So let's see. I'm the gentleman of many masks, according to Mr. Amazingly Bad. I certainly I do own a few, actually, for various illicit deeds. Let's see, what do we have here? The Knight says, I myself am thinking of creating a pirate board game where you sail the islands, looting, visiting ports for resupply and trade, and sinking others' ships. I like the sound of that. You will have to let me know how that goes. That does sound quite a lot of fun. Gimel Star says, I hope you and your family are well. We are. Thank you very much. And what else do we have here? We have Velvet Tea Cake has just finished our actual play of Bridgeton Rectory. That's the name of our costume dramas chapter, and they came from the RPG Anthology. We ran a game. It's just a two-parter, so it was easy to listen to. Which is set in February 1917 Russia, like an hour before the revolution, the peasant revolution starts. And so it's a costume drama, except it's set on the cusp of revolution. And that was a lot of fun. You can find that over on the Red Moon role-playing YouTube channel that I ran that one. It's called Chekhov's Two Sisters and One Brother. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I did have to activate my potence, or if you're looking Requiem, my vigor, to lift all those boxes. And Law by Night says, I got very saucy with my unwrapping. I'm always very saucy, Jack. You know that. Nicholas says, does chapters have a high replayability level? I would say so. The sheer number of characters you've got and the different options you can follow through the game, there is a lot of replayability to this board game. Humanoid Cable Dread says, I like the personal horror stuff over the superhero vampire campaigns. I agree. I'm a big fan of personal horror too. One of the games I'm running on my Patreon, patreon.com/Matthew Dawkins, is Wraith the Oblivion, and that's always a lot of fun to do the personal horror with Wraith. I've been running that game now for over a year. Nicholas says, I didn't know you were working on Retaliation. Yes, Well of the Apocalypse Retaliation is one of the board games I'm working on right now. I like to keep myself busy. I work across RPGs, board games, card games, sometimes video games. Really kind of have to in this industry to earn a living wage from it. And I am fortunate enough to work for a company that is more than happy for me to work across multiple other companies. So yeah, Retaliation isn't going to be exactly the same as chapters in its form. It's a werewolf game, a lot more combat, but not entirely. There's still plenty of social challenges, mental puzzles. I'm really fond of the enigmas system that will be existing in Retaliation. That's something that I think you will all find very fun. So what else do we have? Humanoid Cable Dread says, would this be a good product to get other people into Vampire the Masquerade? I suggest so. I think board games are almost always more accessible than role-playing games. Role-playing games can be incredibly accessible, of course, by design. We want them to be, but there's a wider market in the world for board games. So I think it's a nice jumping on point, just the same as Bloodlines was as a video game or Redemption was as a video game. Velvet TK says, what a beautiful fire hazard. I'm assuming you're referring to the Chapters board game and not me. Let's see. Humanoid Cable Dread says, do any iconic characters show up in Chapters? If by that you mean Beckett, Anatole, or Lucita, the answer would be no. But there are characters who you may recognize from Montreal by Night if you're familiar with that, and maybe a little more than that, but that's all I will say. No one who is, I guess, on the front cover of a comic anyway. So what else do we have here? Dungeon Dumbo just says blimey. I think blimey is quite accurate. Danny Favale Boom says, I actually didn't back chapters specifically because of too much content. Stacks and stacks of plastic heavy Kickstarters have invaded my home already. You know, once all of this is put together, I think it will fit quite nicely on one of my shelves, although it'll be nice to know which one, given that they're all currently occupied. But I understand that. I've got a lot of Apocalypse World, Cthulhu Wars, and so on, and that does take up a lot of room. I find myself cycling a lot of games out. I either give them to my local gaming clubs or I sell them, and that obviously helps keep room. Nemesis as well is taking up quite a lot of room in this study of mine. Meme.the-node says, by the end of this, you'll be trapped behind a horde of Vampire the Masquerade merchandise like the Cappadocians in their prison. That would be poetic, wouldn't it? And Jack Reed says, can't wait till my pre-order of Chapters comes in. Still bummed I missed out on backing it. I backed Retaliation, though. Good for you. And Alvi said, did you see that the Quay Jin V5 adaptation on Storyteller's Vaults came out a few months back? I did not. I don't really keep up with the V5 releases now. I'm not working on it. I'm more focused on other role-playing games, but I do still keep my hand in with World of Darkness when it comes to board games. And I'm not a massive fan of the Quaijin, the Kindred of the East as a concept, so I hope someone has done a good job with them. I'm unlikely to ever use them in any games I run, just as a general idea. D Wunjo says, back the game, just got it. Looks awesome. Went through the first Ventrue prologue. I hope you had fun with that. Adam Brown says, happy birthday, mate. I took your advice and checked out some Ballard. Concrete Island, Crash, and Vermilion Sands were superb. Thanks for the recommendation. Thank you, Adam. That is wonderful. That's wonderful. I love it when I hear back from someone who, from God knows when, I'd said, read some J.G. Ballard. He's my favorite author. Only for you to come back and say that you have. I'm a big fan of Crash, as I think is one of his classics. I won't get too far into this because I know not everyone's a big fan of literature. Crash is a classic. Concrete Island is less well regarded. It's almost prototypical. It feels kind of half formed, or it sort of leans halfway toward Crash, halfway toward High Rise. But I quite like it. It feels, if I can afford to be a little artistic for a moment, it feels a bit like a jam session or a demo tape, and that rough quality is appealing to me. So how does Heritage compare to Chapters, says Nicholas. Heritage is a very different game. I've got 2 copies of Heritage here. I've got the prototype actually for Heritage, which I should probably try selling at some point for some exorbitant fee, because this is the author's prototype, so it's got pieces in it that don't exist in the end version. So if anyone wants to hit me with a bunch of money and say I'd like to buy it, get in contact via MatthewDawkins.com. Hi Carl says, happy birthday, Matthew. Thomas from Flyers here. Oh, well, Thomas, you know I love you, and you know I'm so glad that you're back. I can't express how happy we are with the final result of that very ambitious project. Not perfect, no, but you know, nothing ever is. All we can do as creative types, Thomas, is keep striving. We just need to keep trying to make the best games we can. And I think we did a damn fine job with Chapters. I think we'll do an even better one with Retaliation, and one day there'll be a second chapter to Chapters with any luck. Humanoid Cable Dread says the High Rise movie was disappointing. I completely disagree. I don't think it's the same as the novel, but I think it's a brilliant movie. I think High Rise is there's people that disagree. Don't worry, I know people disagree. That's fine, but I am a particular fan of it. There are various bits I would have added from the novel. There are various bits I would have taken away. This is always going to be the case when there's source material. But I think it's a good retelling of the story. One of those movies that people often said can't be, well, one of those stories that people often said can't be filmed. And now that Cormac McCarthy has left us, people will be increasingly looking at Blood Meridian, I think, as another story that can't be filmed. I know that's always been the case, but someone will get there. But I would argue it would work better as some kind of 10-part series on a premium TV channel. Anyway, and yes, I completely agree. Thank you for the birthday wishes, everybody. If you love what I do, if you want to send me a happy birthday, I appreciate the words, but do check out the RPG Anthology Kickstarter link below. That is the best present I can have. Qualia Redux, why hello, says High Rise has maybe the best opening line in fiction. It does. There aren't many novels that start with the protagonist eating a dog that's being roasted on a spit on a high-rise balcony. But by that point, Dr. Lang is wondering how he got to that point, and so the story unfolds. Have I read any Haruki Murakami? Now, that's a good question. I have Maiko Kawakami, I've got Kazuo Ishiguro, and various mangas, but no, I do not have Haruki Murakami, whose name I may be butchering. I do. I very much vacillate between fiction and non-fiction. I wouldn't say I get obsessive, although I certainly do about some things. But when it comes to what I'm reading, I tend to throw myself into a particular genre and stick with it for quite a long time. For the last few years, I've been reading almost exclusively non-fiction, an awful lot of history, politics, some philosophical stuff. But I have this year been edging back into fiction. I have read so far this year. What have I read so far this year that is on my shelves? So I've read a hell of a lot of Bosch, as in Michael Connolly's Bosch novels. So Trunk Music, Last Coyote, well, pretty much everything up to those ones because I can't see all the others. I've read The Secret Diaries of Sancho, Charles Ignatius Sancho, which is a wonderful novel, absolutely great. I read Christopher Eccleston's autobiography, I Love the Bones of You, Killer in the Kremlin by John Sweeney, which appeals to me a great deal. I have a big interest in Russia and Ukraine. Darkness at Noon, which is a classic if you're interested in the Stalinist purges and communism and Russia of 1930s. Darkness at Noon is the kind of thing that can very much make you examine your idealism, especially blind idealism. I read 11/22/63 by Stephen King. I actually pretty much sort all my books by things I've read, so it's pretty easy to identify all of them. I also read Billy Summers by Stephen King, and I'm currently on Fairy Tale by Stephen King, which I'm currently juggling with Rivers of London by Ben Aronovich. What else? Oh, The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and Heaven by Maiko Kawakami. So yeah, I read a fair amount. I think there's probably more than that. But I enjoy reading. I read because it gives me ideas, inspires me. Obviously, it's a way of relaxing as well. But when you're writing for a living, it's healthy to read. You shouldn't be completely wrapped up in your own work. I know there's the sort of Garth Marenghi line. I'm one of the few authors who's written more books than he's read. That makes more sense, or more sense for Garth Marenghi. And you can very easily fall into that trap as an author because you're constantly driven to create. You can even convince yourself that by reading other people's works, you may contaminate your own creativity, or you may start stealing ideas. I sometimes feel that way about RPGs. So I don't really read other people's vampire content. Or I didn't when I was writing a lot of vampire because I wanted the ideas to be mine. But when it comes to reading fiction, as I have been a lot this year, I'm finding it very rejuvenating. And up until then, I was reading a hell of a lot of Russian history. So what else do we have? I see Michael Holbrook says, thanks for the long video today. Really pumped for the world below. Hope we get it soon. With a bit of luck and a good wind, and if my good friend Qualia has sent the errata form off, I believe you should be receiving the Ashcan version of it tomorrow. Well, you shouldn't be receiving it, but you should be able to buy it tomorrow. So The World Below is my big subterranean fantasy RPG that I created with a fantastic team of writers, and it's a game I'm very, very proud of. Very much out of my normal wheelhouse, but it's got traditional fantasy. It's got monster slaying, treasure hunting, lost cities and forgotten temples to explore. There's also some politics, some philosophy, some faith, lots of things that you can sink your teeth into. The Ashcan version, which is the thank you very much, Carlia. It is the slimmed down version that will introduce you to the high concepts, give you characters you can play as immediately, give you the rules, give you some powers, and put a scenario at the back as well. So it's basically a boom introduction, and you can basically see what you like about it. The main reason we're doing this Ashcan version of The World Below is to generate feedback and buzz, but mainly feedback. We want people to read through it and let us know what you think. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you don't. We can't guarantee we will take every single one of your pieces of feedback and act on it, but we will listen to everything you say or read to everything you say. So yeah, if you pick it up tomorrow, and it will be a very low-cost product, and I really hope you do, we would love for you to comment on the Onyx Path forum or Discord with your thoughts, because we've all spent a lot of time on this game, and the Ashcan version is our first teaser of it. So Velvet Tea Cake says, After Dark is a good one, very surreal but also quite grounded. He also writes about his love of jazz and long distance running. Well, Michael Connolly also writes a lot about jazz, and I like Michael Connolly. And of course, Stephen King, who I've also mentioned, also wrote about long distance running, or walking at least. So Humanoid Cable Dread says, I'd be interested if you would do a book stream. I'm not sure what a book stream is, so you'd have to tell me. Maybe this is me being old and out of touch. What's a book stream? Just me reading a book? Wouldn't that fall into sort of copyright issue territory? I don't know. Anyway, wonderful to have these lovely. I know there's going to be a lot of people who are very jealous about the fact that I've got the Hecata pack, because just discussing the books I read. I would love to discuss the books I read if people were interested in hearing about them. The Hecata pack was something that was introduced, I think, at the backer kit level of chapters, so you had to pre-order it at that point, and I have a feeling a few people missed that because they don't read Kickstarter updates, or they just didn't have updates turned on. So I know the Hecata pack is already, I won't call it rare, but in fewer hands than a lot of the other components of this game. So yeah, I'm very pleased to have hold of that. Anyway, we're approaching an hour now. I'd like to make this an even hour, so if anyone has any questions now, whether it's about any of the games I've covered or anything in general, we've got about 3 minutes in which to answer them. So you had better post them quickly, otherwise I will be getting off to bed, which is probably where I should be right now. While any questions are coming in, if there are any questions coming in, once again, as well as they came from the RPG Anthology, I certainly recommend the games I picked up at UK Games Expo. They're at the front of this video. Slay Industry 2nd Edition and Stoke of Earth, they are both fantastic, but also Locus, really struck by Locus, this Silent Hill personal horror game, Silent Hill-esque personal horror game by Cobblepath Games. Very much recommend you check those out. And also, of course, Chapters. I am so pleased to see it. I'm so pleased that it's made its way to me. As an author, as a game writer, when you get to, I guess, see the works you've created, hold them in your hand, play with them yourself, it puts everything into a different kind of perspective. I'm not someone who buys every single book I write on, despite what it may appear. But board games I like to own. I like to own board games I've worked on. It's slightly different for me. And there's only 1 or 2 that I've worked on that were released that I've never received a copy of, and I'm unlikely to ever buy. But yeah, Chapters was a game I was going to get no matter what. I would have bought it if it hadn't been in my contract. Sorry, Flyers Games, you've lost out on a profit there. But I'm so happy to have a copy. My friends who are currently working their way through Gloomhaven with me, they're doing Frosthaven separately. They cut me out of that group. We intend to jump onto Chapters next, so I'll just have to keep my mouth shut about plot elements I know, if I remember all of them. Meme.the-node says, easy one, what's the meaning of life? Meaning of life is to have fun, be entertained. You will have to work for it sometimes. You will have days of misery. You will feel sad. You will feel defeated sometimes. But the important thing to remember, and the meaning of life, is that Misery does not last forever. Struggles do not last forever. And while those struggles will sometimes come around again, they'll rear their heads again and again, you will find opportunities to smile among them, whether you smile because you're reading a book, listening to a song you like, watching a movie, playing with friends, seeing friends, having a drink with friends, just spending time out and about. You may not have friends, just going for a nice walk. Having fun, finding joy in your life is the meaning of life. And it's wherever you find that joy. Our V says, what's your most off-the-wall idea you want to make a game or something, etc.? Well, I can't tell you that, because if I did, I wouldn't be able to make it. I'd have to pitch it first, sell it to someone, and convince them to make it for me. I do have some off-the-wall ideas, believe me. There is one in particular that I would love to revisit soon. It is just not the correct climate to do it. Velvet Tea Cake on holiday next week. We'll see if the game store there has Locus. There you go. And if not, pick it up online. So, G. Karask. I'm going to try getting this right. G. Karaskakis, I will go for. Just finished. It could have been Karaskakis. Just finished Swan Song, been following you for almost a decade. Huge fan. That's very kind of you. Swan Song is another one of those, another vampire project I enjoyed working on a great deal, especially the Boston by Night source book, which you can get through. I think it's still only available through the Epic Games Store, which is a shame because I think it's a good book. And it's a shame that it's kind of a narrow avenue to get it. You may be able to get it from Renegade, but I'm not sure. But yeah, Swan Song was a lot of fun. I do still feel it's the best vampire video game for actually showing off what vampire is like as a role-playing game. Whether you feel that translates to a good video game experience is really subjective, but I think it's the best translation of Vampire the Masquerade tabletop to Vampire the video game. Anyway, with all that said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Back the They Came from the RPG Anthology Kickstarter. It's in its last day, and leave a comment to say that you came there from Matthew's video, because that tells me you listened, and also that you're giving support, and I appreciate any support you can give for these games of ours. All that said, have a lovely rest of your week, and I will see you again.